Then we have certain other types of difficulty that don't have to do with numbers so much, but has to do with what was going on when there seems to be a contrary motivation. And I'm talking now about the earlier episode that gave rise to this whole thing of buying the threshing floor of Araunah, and that is David had decided to do a census, a national census of all of the citizens in his Hebrew kingdom. And in 2 Samuel 24:1 we read, "And again the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel." Now it doesn't say exactly why, but I think probably it is evident that when Israel came into a position of real prominence and domination in the whole Near East, which is what happened when David won every campaign that he ever fought, and he had vassals going up all the way to the kingdom of Hamath, and even the kingdom of Syria was subject to him, and all of the cities of Phoenicia were, in a sense, either vassals or tributaries. And he had Edom under control, and the Ammonite territory, and Moab. They were all subject to David. The very great likelihood was that the people under David's rule began to become materialistic in their outlook. This is always what happens when you have too much money and too much power and everything is coming easy. So we read that the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, "Go and number Israel and Judah." Well, in the parallel account in 1 Chronicles 21:1 and 2, it is stated that Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. Now, who did it? Who was the motivator? Was it Yahweh or was it Satan? Well, David said to Joab and the rulers of the people, "Go and number Israel from Beersheba," which was this extreme southern town, even to Dan, which is the northernmost town, "and bring me the number to me that I may know it." The wording of 1 Chronicles 21:2 is very similar to that of 2 Samuel 24:2, so that there is no real difference. But so far as the first verse of each chapter is concerned, it appears that in 2 Samuel 24, God himself incited David to conduct the census, whereas in Chronicles it was Satan, the adversary of God. Well, this would seem to be a pretty serious discrepancy unless both statements are true. In neither book are we given a definite context for this census taking. But while we are not fully aware of what was going on in David's heart, David had apparently been building up an attitude of pride and self-admiration and complacency for what he had accomplished in the way of military success and economic expansion. And he began to think more in terms of armaments and troops and resources than in terms of the faithful mercies of God. In his youth, he had put his entire trust in God alone, whether he was facing Goliath with a slingshot or an army of Amalekites with a band of 400 men. But in later years, he had come to rely more and more on material resources, like any hard-headed realist, and he had learned to measure his strength by the yardstick of numbers and wealth. And therefore the Lord decided that it was time for David to be brought to his knees once more and to be cast on the grace of God through a time of soul-searching trial. So he encouraged David to carry out his plan that he'd long cherished and plan his future military strategy with a view to the most effective deployment of his armed forces. And maybe this would have afforded him a better base for assessing taxes. And so God, in effect, said to him, all right, go ahead and do it. Then you'll find out how much good it'll do you. Well, interestingly enough, General Joab, who was commander of the armed forces under David, although he was a pretty hard-bitten and, shall we say, ambitious commander, felt very uneasy about the whole thing. And he sensed that David and his advisors were becoming inflated over their brilliant conquests. And he was afraid that the Lord was displeased with this new attitude. And so he did his best to persuade David not to carry through. And so we read in 1 Chronicles 21:3, Joab says, the Lord make his people 100 times so many more as they be. But my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants? Why doth my lord then require this thing? Why will there be a cause of trespass to Israel? And so there's a definite sense in which Yahweh gave David a final warning through the lips of Joab before he finally committed himself to the census. All right, then, the obvious conclusion to draw is that Satan, observing what was going on, was rubbing his hands with glee. He said, he's going to get into trouble, hooray. And so you have Satan employing the temptation to try this champion of God and to give him the worst that possibly could happen. So Satan got involved in this affair to encourage David to commit folly. And it was in his interest, of course, to do so. And you get a similar thing, do you not, in the first chapter of Job, where Satan says, well, okay, you can point out Job as a model to me of a man of integrity and true faith, but I'm here to tell you that he's only doing it in his self-interest. And the reason he has been serving you is to continue your defense and favor of him. So Satan was allowed to put Job to the test. So here again, you see, you have God permitting and Satan seizing upon the opportunity. And so I don't think that you have any impossible conflict here. In the aftermath of the plague, which cost the lives of 70,000 Israelites, according to 2 Samuel 24:15, the angel of the Lord designated the exact spot on Mount Moriah where the plague had stopped to be the location of the future temple.